All right, guys, we're back for week 12 of the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni. What's up, dude?
What's going on, buddy?
I took multiple devastating losses last week. And then the other thing that happened is I actually put in a ticket for gambling. If you guys watch the gambling show, we used some picks in there. I did a three-leg parlay. It was the Dolphins -2.5. It was the Ravens -7.5. Both features from my picks for the gambling show that week. And then we threw in the Lions money line. Is because I did it with my dad, and my dad's a big Lions fan. So I was like, okay, well, we'll do that then. The Dolphins barely cover, which was kind of crazy. We'll talk about that more, like on the gambling show, though, or whatever. And Lamar Jackson did not cover against Shador Sanders, so out $100. I think I had three devastating fantasy losses. Seasons are potentially destroyed now. Well, yeah, it was a great week for me, if you're asking. All right, let's do the buys this week. We have quite a few of them. The Miami Dolphins, the Washington Redskins, the Denver Broncos, the LA Chargers, and Jamar Chase are all on buy this week. Jamar decided that he wanted to hawk a loogie on Jalen Ramsey. So he got suspended by the league. I guess he appealed and said that if I meant to spit on him, I would have spit on his face. Did not work. So I'm missing Jamar Chase in 40% of my fantasy leagues. Thanks, buddy. But I'm sure he'll enjoy the week off. But let's get into the game breakdowns, and I'll let you take this one. I feel like I've been starting first a lot more recently.
Sure. Bills going to the Texans, actually a team that I believe they're 0-5 against in their last five. Kind of an interesting narrative that I've been seeing cropping up on social media. The Bills with a 24.5 implied team total, Texans with a 19-point implied team total coming back. It does look like CJ Stroud is going to be ruled out with his concussion this week. Very rare that you see 3 weeks missed from a concussion, but they did say he should be back week 13. For the Bills, we just got the report. It looks like Keon Coleman is going to be benched for a second week in a row. I don't know if that means they're going to make him inactive, but Pro Football Talk said I think that was the exact quote, getting benched again. So just avoid Keon Coleman. He's going to be a sit for us. Dawson Knox last week, that was a guy that I streamed in a couple places thinking he would get the Dalton Kincaid red zone usage. It's hard to say because Josh ran the ball in a few times. I think Cook had a touchdown too, I believe. So when you get that sort of scoring in the red zone, that's going to swing what the tight end's usage is. Maybe that's all it was, but I would just rather not roll Dawson Knox this week. He is out of my starting lineup. Even on my Kincaid roster, I actually got really lucky. Some guy dropped Jawan Johnson during his bye. So I was able to go get Jawan Johnson off the waiver, but don't start Dawson Knox if you have him. Your three starts are going to be Allen, Cook, Shakir. I think with uh with the matchup this week, even if I was going to say like with Stingley Jr. taking the Bills X receiver, but I don't think the X receiver really matters in the Bills. To me, the way I view the Bills is Shakir's the only one who's worth anything, and they're going to need to move the ball. And with Kincaid out, I'm just sort of plugging Shakir in my lineups like full time. I know it's a tough matchup, but he's not going to get Stingley out of the slot. I'm going to go ahead and roll Shakir this week. And then Cook and Allen don't really need to say anything there. And then for the Texans, I know Schultz has been getting really good volume lately. I just don't want to attack this Bills matchup with Davis Mills throwing him the ball. That's a little too much for me. And then Chubb, I know the Bills have been one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, but for Chubb, he dropped to like below a 40% usage rate last week. It seems like they've sort of committed to switching over to Woody Marks. I like Chubb in matchups where you think the offense might be scoring enough that he falls in the end zone. I don't know if that's the case here. The Bills aren't a great defense, but they're pretty good, especially with Davis Mills at the helm. And then your starts, Collins and Marks. Nico Collins, I'm actually not expecting the best week from. So it's been a source of much debate between me and Ted this year about what to do with old Nico. And I think there's valid opinions both ways. He's been the wide receiver 8 since week 2. He's been particularly effective with Davis Mills throwing him the ball because Davis just force feeds him. Davis will go 12 to 15 targets to Nico Collins, which hopefully CJ Stroud does when he's back. So I think just volume and kind of the pedigree of the player alone, you have to start him. I just don't know what a big week this is going to be here. I don't know, man. I would imagine that the Bills are only worried about what Nico Collins can do to him, and that's pretty easy to game scheme out. So I'm expecting a little bit of a down week from Nico, which is unfortunate. I have him going in 2 must-win games this week, but it just is what it is. And then Woody Marks. I'll let Ted say what he thinks about rolling Woody Marks this week. I love the Woody Marks start personally. I know he's coming off a bad week. He's been a little bit up and down this year. It's sort of the nature of playing behind a bad O line. One, I think the Texans defense is actually good enough to keep them in a neutral game script for a chunk of this week. But two, whether it's neutral or negative, like he gets a lot of passing volume, especially in full PPR. I think he's totally live to get, like, I think he has a target floor this week of 5, maybe a ceiling of 8 targets. That's pretty good, man. That's pretty good. So I am going to roll Woody Marks here as a start in the matchup that projects to be pretty good for him in terms of game script.
Yeah, if we're talking Woody Marks, right? Like last week against the Titans, we did see the usage change. I don't think Nick Chubb got his first carry until like the end of
Yeah.
the third quarter. Obviously he got that carry though because and he started getting work because Woody Marks is averaging under 2 yards a carry against the Titans, who are terrible, right? So the Bills, they have been run onable, but I don't think they're worse than the Titans at stopping the run, right? It's Marks is like he's a flex for me this week. Like I'm not saying sit him or anything. I definitely prefer him to Nick Chubb. But he's not like a smash start for me by any means. I have a roster with Michael Pittman and Woody Marks. I'm starting Woody Marks this week. I
Mhm.
want to start Michael Pittman. My gut is to start Michael Pittman, but it just feels like Woody Marks is the move there, regardless of what I think about the game, right? That's pretty much it. I feel like the Bills are self-explanatory, right? It's the Josh Allen, James Cook show. All right, absolute banger in the early window. We got the what are they 8-2 Indianapolis Colts going to visit the 5-5 Chiefs in a must win. So the Colts are going to be underdogs here. They have a 23-point implied team total, and the Chiefs have a 26.5 implied team total. For the Colts, a little shakeup this week. We're only starting Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren. We're going to sit Josh Downs, and then we're going to tricky decision Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. And then I don't see Dimes on here. Is Dimes a sit or tricky decision, you think?
Yeah, I would have thrown him in the sit. I would not roll Danny Dimes at Arrowhead against the Chiefs. No.
Yeah, I agree. Don't like the Danny Dimes start this
No.
week. Sit him if you can afford it. Then for the Chiefs, boilerplate, it's Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelsey. By the way, Travis Kelsey is somehow the tight end too on the season now. Funny how that works. You're like
Yes.
15 or 16 into his career, however long it's been. We're
Seriously?
I
I
think
didn't.
so. He's been in the league for a long time, man. I
Dude,
could have that number wrong. It's been a long time though.
I have a round 9 Kelsey roster that is steamed all the way up from like 8th place to like 3rd place because he's been going nuts and winning weeks for me. That's so wild. I didn't know that. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Going.
It's interesting, like Rashee Rice being back on the field and Xavier Worthy being back on the field. We thought it was going to be like Xavier Worthy, like
Yeah.
taking all. It's actually just for Travis Kelsey. It clears
No.
out the middle for the 40-year-old man. Speaking of Xavier Worthy, he's going to be a tricky decision for us this week, and then we are sitting the Chiefs running backs. So let's start with Kansas City first. Bad performance last week against the Broncos. I have Mahomes rosters that kind of shit their pants. Rashee Rice had his first like single digit point total of the week, but at the end of the day, that is the Denver Broncos defense, and this is the Indianapolis Colts defense. Obviously, the Colts traded for Sauce Gardner, so they aren't as trash as they have been in previous weeks with the secondary, but we're not sitting Mahomes and Rice under any circumstances. To me, at this point, maybe if it really starts going downhill, then we can have a conversation like week 17 or something. But these players are just too good. I think that as a whole, the Chiefs' offense is still in a significantly better place than it's been in years. I know last week wasn't great, but I'm still bullish on the offense. Love those starts. Then Travis Kelsey, like we were saying, right? Ugly but effective. Tight end two on the year somehow. And yeah, apparently Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice being on the field just opens up more room for Travis Kelsey to get targets. Yeah, tight end one this week, I guess. We're gonna tricky decision Worthy. The idea here is that he's been getting open on a lot of these deep routes. It hasn't popped in the box score, right? And part of that is that Mahomes has just been missing Xavier Worthy on the deep routes. I know that it's something that I clowned on coming into the year. I was an aggressive Worthy drafter because I was like, okay, like maybe Patrick Mahomes was bottom five in deep ball efficiency last year. Are you betting on that happening again this year? Hasn't looked right. Hasn't looked right in any way, shape, or form. But I think he's at least worth a tricky decision here. It feels like in a back and forth game like this might be the spot where Mahomes connects. The Chiefs have to win this game at any cost. It wouldn't be shocking to see a worthy splash play here for me. Then we're going to sit the running backs. It looks like Isaiah Pacheco got a full practice in on Wednesday, so he's going to be going. But he had like a knee brace on, at practice. So at least the way I'm reading this is Pacheco will go, but his role will probably be reduced from what it normally was, and what it normally was wasn't good to begin with, right? Kareem Hunt is just a plotter, and you hope you get in the end zone, and then Brashard Smith is a cute little like gadget play second down guy, right? So you're splitting up not very much value three ways. I'm not interested. If you had to make me order the like I don't know the way I like them, I probably like Kareem Hunt the most this week, just because he has the chance to fall in the end zone. Pacheco and Brashard Smith under no circumstances, and the viewers will be happy to know I have finally broken the chains of being a Isaiah Pacheco manager. I dropped his ass this week to stream Jacoby Brissett because I have Justin Herbert on bye, so I'm no longer shackled, waiting for Isaiah Pacheco to have the season I thought he would have. It's officially an L in the old ledger for me. Then for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor is a no-brainer at this point. It doesn't matter that the Chiefs are good against the running back; he is just transcendent. Tyler Warren against the Falcons in I forgot what they were. They were in Europe somewhere though. He was effectively the wide receiver one though that week in the comeback win against the Falcons. Tight end is a hard position anyways to begin with. He's inside my top five this week. The only tight ends I probably prefer to Warren are going to be exactly Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and George Kittle. That's it. And then Tyler Warren's up there in that elite class. Then for the wide receivers and Danny Dimes, really, it's just we have over the last 2 weeks, Danny Dimes has like accounted for 6 turnovers. He's turning the ball over at a higher clip. It feels like defenses are kind of trying to take away his first read, which he's been so reliant on in the first half of the year, and make him make reads, and that seems like that's a little bit more difficult. And then we're coupling that with a very good Chiefs defense with Steve Spagnuolo that does a good job on the quarterback and fantasy wide receivers. It just feels like there's not as much there to work with this week. So Downs, we prefer the least out of the 3 wide receivers, so he's just going to be a sit for us. I feel like that's super desperation. Try and look somewhere else if you're thinking about Josh Downs. Then Pittman and Pierce, we want to call tricky decisions. Michael Pittman, just if you look at the year as a whole, it's been good for the most part. He's had a couple single digit stinker weeks, but a lot of it has been good. It's just it feels like the matchup isn't great. It feels like Dimes isn't playing his best, right? And then Alec Pierce has had like a couple really nice weeks. He's kind of been like if you just like are looking at the points per game for fantasy, like he's been in that wide receiver two, wide receiver one borderline. I'm not under the illusion that he's the wide receiver one in this offense, but I think that at this point I would prefer him to Downs. He's always liable to get loose on a deep ball. You could, it feels like extremely high variance to me. Like, and maybe if you're down big in your matchup and you need like I don't know, desperation flex to maybe get 15 to 17 points, you could do it, but just be okay with a 4 to 5 pointer if that happens as well. What do you think, man? Did I miss anything here?
No, not a whole lot to add on. Okay, Patriots at the Bengals. Actually, a game I'm really looking forward to. Vrabel had the bye to retool his team, or not the bye, but Vrabel has the bye coming up to retool his team a little bit. I'm curious what direction they go with this thing. I think the younger guys are getting involved a lot more in offense. I don't know. It's just a really exciting time to be a Patriots investor, which me and Ted are quite heavily in fantasy this year. The Patriots with a 28.75 implied team total, going to the Bengals at home with a 21.75 point implied team total. We are treating it for now like Joe Flacco starting. This would be 2 weeks ahead of, or a week ahead of the earliest timeline that Joe Burrow got on his foot surgery. I don't know, man. I would be pretty surprised if they like hurried Joe Burrow back in a year where they're pretty much eliminated from title contention already. If they do, that would be a very Bengals thing to do, but it would be shocking to me, very shocking to me. But keep your eyes out. I would assume that report would go live on Friday or early Saturday if they are going to roll him. But for the Patriots, May probably live to be the QB1 overall this week. If not, he's damn close. I think he very well will be, very well may be, but I think he probably will be. Just because the Bengals are going to force him to pass a lot, man, and he's just been so good. I love Drake May this week. Trevion Henderson, we are still rolling him out as a high-end RB2 this week. Ramondre probably comes back, so keep that in mind. We'll keep an eye on the usage, but I think you have to start him after what he's produced the last 2 weeks. I believe he's been the running back 2 over the last 3 weeks. So just an extremely productive run. I'm not benching him, and against the worst rush defense in the NFL. But I do think Ramondre is going to be involved a lot more than the fantasy community thinks. And then Diggs, Stephon Diggs, really coming on with his usage, with his role. Absolutely love him. You are getting him in your lineup. And then your sort of tricky decisions for us. Kayshon Boutte and Ramondre Stevenson. The matchup is so good. If you need an emergency RB2, and I noticed Ramondre was dropped in a bunch of leagues. I think that's a mistake. I think he should not be on waiver wires. But if you're a hero or a zero RB roster and you need your RB2 spot filled this week, I absolutely think you can roll Ramondre if he goes. I think he's live to get in the end zone. I think the most likely role I see him getting on this offense is going to be the inside the 5 yard line, inside the 10 yard line work. So yeah, he's a sort of tricky decision. Then Bootie's just because he was so great before he got injured. He's back off his hamstring. But I think I would just prefer Diggs over him right now. Like in 12 team leagues, I don't think there's any reason to force him in your lineup. But if you're like, I noticed again, he was dropped in a lot of places. If you're just going to your wire and you need a flex spot, Kayshon Bootie's great. He's live for 15 plus half PPR points any given week he plays with Drake May. For the Bengals, we're going to start Chase Brown. Chase Brown has had a total resurgence the last few weeks since P. Ryan went down. He's been absolutely balling out. He's just awesome, man. Like to me, you're getting what you drafted him for, even with Joe Flacco here. Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco does not affect Chase Brown's outlook. To me, that is a back end running back one, probably for the rest of the season. He has one of the easiest schedules going forward. And then T. Higgins. T. Higgins is going to get the Christian Gonzalez matchup with the news that Jamar Chase is suspended this week. That's not great. Christian Gonzalez is like a lanky guy too. He handles guys like T. Higgins pretty well. But T. Higgins has been like a mid-range wide receiver one any week that Jamar Chase has missed over the last 2 or 3 years. So like you have to start him. You absolutely have to start him. I don't care who the quarterback is. He needs to be in your lineup. I just like, would I put him in DFS? No, because I do think the Christian Gonzalez thing is very real. And I do think it becomes a lot easier to game plan for this passing attack with no Jamar Chase in there. It's just hard. Yoshi Voss is like a decent role player. But that's Jamar Chase is a whole different animal, a generational talent. And then our sit for this week for the Bengals is going to be Joe Flacco. I don't know. The Patriots defense is pretty good. Their pass rush is pretty good. Variable's pretty good. Flacco kind of shit the bed a little bit last week. Like, I don't know if I would rush to have him in my lineup. I know he's been on everyone's like streaming radar the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think I've seen him started in like all 12 of the free Tendies fantasy leagues. He has been starting for someone the last 2 or 3 weeks. I would maybe cool off on that now. I know the game script is going to be good. I don't think I want any of that. I think he's live for turnovers. I think the Patriots are a great streaming defense this week.
Yeah, maybe it's a different conversation with Joe Flacco. Jamar Chase is in there, but
Yeah.
he's not, man. And the whole thing with the Bengals, right? They have two elite wide receivers, and ideally that's why they're such a good passing offense, right? You're missing by far the best. Is he by far the best? At least I would say the best wide receiver in the league, in Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is going to have Christian Gonzalez on him. It feels like it's probably like a weird Noah Fant, Yoshi Voss like type of week that I don't know. It just feels like the Bengals offense will not be as explosive in this spot. Chase Brown, I feel like the start this week is much more so for the receiving work than the rushing work. The Patriots are still excellent against the running back, and the Bengals can't block. But Chase Brown does good with the ball in his hands. I think that it'd be a lot of dump downs from Joe Flacco. Then on the Patriots, just get ready, boys. I am preparing. At least where I'm at with this Trevion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson thing is I think Ramondre is going to come back and it's going to be exactly the same it is before he went down, right? I listen. It is not. I'm not saying that Ramondre was ever better than Trevion Henderson. I think Trevion Henderson was better than Ramondre Stevenson from day one on the Patriots. That was never the issue. It felt like the issue was Variable had this role that he wanted Ramondre to play, right? I don't know if the 2 weeks where Hendo popped off are going to change anything. Like it really just kind of is up to Vrabel and what he wants to do, right? We saw on the podium like he complimented Hendo's pass blocking, so maybe he gets a little bit more, but I'm just worried that it's going to go kind of back to that weird 50-50 or unstartable fantasy backfield. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the spot where Henderson takes off. I think the Patriots offense would be better off for it. I think fantasy managers would be better off for it if they did that, but I'm not chalking anything up. I'm not assuming anything Vrabel does at this point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, this one. And let me tell you, boys, I have an embarrassing amount of fantasy bags on this game. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers going into Soldier Field to play Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Bears. And the Bears are favored here. Steelers have an implied team total of 21 points, and the Bears have an implied team total of 23.5 points. For the Steelers, we're going to start DK Metcalf. We're going to start Kenny Gainwell or Jalen Warren, depending on whether or not Jalen Warren goes. And then we're going to have the Muth here pop up as an emergency streamer if you are desperate at the tight end position. Then we have Aaron is a tricky decision. I don't know if Aaron goes. Right now, it's the last report we had on Aaron Rodgers' availability in this game is that it was a true 50-50, and he said today on the podium that it's going to be up to Mike Tomlin and it's a safety issue. So I feel like it's Mason Rudolph. It might be Aaron Rodgers. Either way, whichever quarterback it's going to be, I think it's a tricky decision for either of them. Then for the Bears, we're going to start Caleb Williams. We're going to start DeAndre Swift. We're going to start Rome Odunze. We are sitting DJ Moore, who I had to make sure to get on the slides because Yanni didn't add him. I'm assuming that's because he thinks that he's no longer fantasy relevant. Then we're going to tricky decision Colston Loveland and Kyle Monangai. And let's start with the Steelers first, I suppose. Listen, this Bears defense is just injured and not very good. They looked fine against nine last week, but I feel like nine might be able to make any defense look good. I'm not under the illusion that the Steelers are some dynamic offense at this point, but I think Arthur Smith is pretty good at what he does. It feels like even if Aaron doesn't play, the Steelers should be able to have success in the air and on the ground in this game. That's why DK Metcalf has a start. He's really the only fantasy relevant wide receiver in Pittsburgh. We're not chasing Calvin Austin. We're not chasing Roman Wilson points here. It just even in the best matchup, the only one we can recommend is DK. Kenny Gainwell and Jalen Warren, they're still going to be starts for us because of the quality of the defense here. Listen, this might be a hot take, but if Jalen Warren doesn't go, I prefer Kenny Gainwell far more than I would prefer Jalen Warren if he plays.
Yeah.
Reason being that the Steelers team has just decided that Kenny Gainwell is the third down back, and if Jalen Warren misses for any point in time, then Kenny Gainwell is like a three down feature back bell cow for some reason. And Jalen Warren looks great when he's on the field, and his rush efficiency has been really good. His yards per carry have been really good. He looks explosive. He hurdled a guy against the Chargers. He had a nice 35-yard run on like his first carry of the game against the Bengals, but if he's only getting 40-50% of the snaps when he's on there, it just kind of distills everything down. To me, if Jalen Warren misses, Kenny Gainwell is a totally acceptable RB2. If Kenny Gainwell plays, then Jalen Warren is like a flex to me. I have a roster where Jalen Warren is my RB2, and all year I've been starting him and wishing he was a flex instead. Then the Muth for emergency streamer. I'm going to save that for Yanni because I didn't ask about this, but I'm interested to hear the thoughts. We already talked about Aaron slash Mason Rudolph, whoever goes. Then for the Bears. So this is going to be tricky, right? The Steelers have looked better defensively over the past 2 weeks. I'm not sure how much of that is playing the Los Angeles Chargers with no line and Joe Flacco with no line, right? The Bears' offensive line is significantly better than those two teams, and I think Caleb has looked marginally better over the past couple weeks, especially with his scrambling. And it looks like Caleb's kind of hard to bring down. So the way I'm reading this is I'm gonna default to the Steelers are still kind of the same defensive unit we saw the majority of the year. I don't think that moving Jalen Ramsey to safety was some like giga brain move that foundationally changes what the Steelers are on defense. And Caleb has had a lot of good weeks, so I feel like he's a start here. I think he's a very high risk start because I think it's totally on the board. He just gets anywhere from 10 to 11 points, but it's also on the board. He has one of those high 20 to 30 point games like we've seen at points in the year. He's like a low end QB1 to me, high variance, and just kind of know what you need from the quarterback position going into this week to make an informed decision on that. DeAndre Swift is also going to be a start. the usage in the backfield, like Monangai is definitely involved now. He was like one of the he was the real post by rookie bump winner in Chicago. So now it's kind of like 60-40 ish Swift. Swift gets more work on third downs. It feels like so Swift has been better on a per touch basis than Monangai, like very clearly since they've both been on the field. So there will be drives where they just kind of leave Swift out there, or they'll give Swift an extra drive. So it's not just directly 50-50 like the Panthers had with Chuba and Rico when they were still doing that. But I think Swift's a perfectly acceptable RB2 this week. Maybe low end RB2 if you want to be super, I don't know, not charitable. The Steelers, they still have JJ Watt, or not JJ Watt, TJ Watt, and I think they're 27th in points allowed to the fantasy running back. So they're actually a pretty good like rush defense technically, but they give up a lot of yards. I don't know, and I feel like it'd take a lot to bench Swift at this point in time. I like him this week. Then Roma Dunze. To me, he's like a wide receiver too this week. The Steelers play a lot of man. That's what they do. That's what Mike Tomlin wants to do. And Roma Dunze splits are significantly better against man than zone. If the Steelers are playing zone, I would still start Roma Dunze anyways because I think it's very clear here. DJ Moore is now an afterthought, and Roma Dunze is the alpha. I just like him a little bit more this week given the stylistic matchup. Again, to me, he's like a wide receiver too. I think that if he's your like hero wide receiver, you're in trouble. But I think he's a very strong wide receiver to start this week. Totally fine. DJ Moore, I don't know, man. It feels like he's going to be on another team next year. It just I don't know what the usage is. I don't know why they refuse to get him involved. And he hasn't looked that good when he has been involved. Like if you're interested in chasing the 2 to 3 gadget handoffs he gets a game, I guess, but a very clear sit to me at this point in time. Then we got the rookies, Colston Loveland, Kyle Monangai. Colston Loveland, he's like, I feel like he's a tricky decision because of the tight end position being tough. And his usage has been at least decent over the past 3 weeks, really. Cole Kmet is back in there, so you got to keep that in mind. Colston Loveland does not have 100% of the tight end room like he did against the Bengals, where he popped off. But he's looked better to me. He's broken a couple tackles. He's had a couple splash plays. This is really just kind of buying into the fact that Ben Johnson is going to continue to start featuring these rookies more, especially ones that were highly drafted and have looked good when they've had opportunity. Why not? Then Monangai. This is mostly desperation flex. I hope he falls in the end zone, and I hope his like 40 to 35% of the snaps that he sees at the running back position pan out. I would prefer to sit Monangai this week, but I understand fantasy managers that are dealing with injury or something else that make it more just difficult, and I think that in a pinch you could do it. What do you think, man? Did I sell Caleb short?
No, well, I mean, I guess a little bit. I think Caleb's a rock solid starter this week. Like, I think he's probably live to do pretty well here. He's at home. The matchups are favorable to Odunze. Over the last 2 weeks, Luther Burden has officially overtaken Olamide Zacchaeus as the wide receiver 3. He hit an over 60% snap rate last week, which I'm really excited about because I absolutely love the player. Loveland is 50-50 with Kmet, which is very annoying, but he's looking better and better each week to me. About DeAndre Swift real quick. I know he's, been getting he's always the topic of conversation in the fantasy community. He is an RB1 this year, guys. Like I think he's RB11 in points per game. That's an RB1. I just don't really, to me, it's like there's not really any, I mean, is Monangai going to vulture goal line touches? Yes. Is that annoying? Because it probably takes away that like 18 to 20 point ceiling from Swift. Yes, that is annoying. Yes, it probably takes away the number of 18 to 20 point weeks he can have, but he's still the RB11 in points per game. Like, I don't really know why there's so much conversation about him. He's having one of the best years of his career in terms of like a per game basis for fantasy. And then the Muth is an emergency streamer for a start. That is just because Mason Rudolph actually does tend to target tight ends at a pretty high rate. And I think they're going to need to put up points here. I think Arthur Smith uses tight end really well. I just think the Muth is a sneaky DFS start. I don't know if I'll have him in my cash lineups because I just need to hit the top 50% there. But for like prizes, I like the Muth a lot this week. Okay, God, uneventful game here, but a game that is very consequential for my fantasy season. The Jets with a 15.5 implied team total going to Baltimore with a 29-point implied team total. The Jets, quick and easy. You're sitting every single person on the Jets except for Breece Hall. And even then, like, I'm moderately concerned about what the future looks like for Breece Hall. I think Tyrod Taylor getting in there does stabilize the offense a lot. I think he's going to get absolute crazy workhorse volume with the receiving work and the carries. It's just really hard. I don't know what the context of the environment that's going to be occurring in looks like. I have a contending roster with Breece Hall that's like a very good roster, and like I still think he's a high end RB2, back end RB1 for the rest of the season. He's somewhere in that 10 to 15 range. It's just hard. I wonder if this week it's going to be particularly hard, but I believe he will get you there with the receiving work. And then for the Ravens, I think this is pretty boilerplate for what they've been this year. I know we keep getting disappointed by Zay Flowers, but I kind of feel like with how light their schedule is rest of the season, you have to start him. He's been tackled inside the 5-yard line twice on big breakaway plays the last 2 weeks, which again really impacted my fantasy. It actually cost me a week in a league me and Ted are in League 7. I know it's been frustrating. I just think the matchup's so soft you have to. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, no explanation needed there. We're getting into cold weather Derrick Henry. Hopefully we start to see some of those big winter games he tends to have. And then Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has been, I think, the tight end 3 or 4 the last month since Lamar got back. He's averaging double-digit half PPR points per game. He hit the fastest miles per hour he's ever hit on an NFL field last week on that like reverse tush push where he ran a sweep play off the tush push. Saved you for the week because that was a 9-point play, right? He was looking pretty dismal before that. I just think like, he's a TD dependent tight end 1, meaning he's probably still going to be somewhere around a tight end 1 or in the back end, high end of tight end 2 without the touchdown. But when he gets it, you're going to get a mid-range to high end tight end 1 week. I have a hard time benching Mark Andrews right now because him and Lamar have been pretty productive. I know it feels weird and fluky and like it's held together with duct tape and chewed gum. Because how do I know this, by the way? I lost Tucker Kraft on 3 rosters and I'm now rolling freaking Mark Andrews on 3 rosters. It does not feel good. You're never on a week-to-week basis. You're never like, yes, my tight end Mark Andrews is a tight end 1 this week. Let's go. It is nerve-wracking until he catches the touchdown. I just think like his schedule's so good rest of season. Unless something really changes here, I think he is like a locked and loaded tight end 1 in your roster. I say that very begrudgingly, very, very begrudgingly. It just is what it is, though. Kind of boring, but I think you're starting him going forward.
Yeah, I still feel like Mark Andrews has lost multiple steps from his
Oh,
prime, but it's the relationship, right, with Lamar Jackson. Like I feel like Travis Kelce's in the same boat, right, where it's like a tight end that I just feel like is not anywhere close to the player that we knew, but
yeah.
the relationship with the quarterback's so good, and the tight end position is so hard that by default, if he keeps scoring touchdowns at the clip he is, then he just has to be a tight end 1, right?
He
Then for
might
the
hit, dude, he might hit 10 touchdowns this year again.
that's
Like
insane.
he might be live for 10 to 12 touchdowns this year, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Like top 10 in the NFL in touchdowns. Just whatever.
18 catches for 10 touchdowns. It's like
Yeah.
the Mark Andrews season this year. Then for the Jets, I you know I can't help but think that hopefully Tyrod Taylor will be better for this Jets offense. I'm still selling them as far as I can sell them, especially without Garrett Wilson. I think that Tyrod Taylor is probably a back end backup in this league, right? He's not even like a premier backup quarterback. He's just kind of in the lower tier. He always finds teams for whatever reason, but hopefully at least some threat of a passing attack can help Brees Hall. Like, really, Brees Hall to me is startable unless the offense goes to 0, right? And with Justin Fields out there, it looked like it actually might go to 0. It still might go to 0, but hoping that it looks a little bit better and we can still get our Brees Hall weeks.
Dude, I think like there's a scenario in which Brees Hall gets wide receiver 1 usage like going forward. I think there's a total range of outcomes here where he gets like 7 to 8 targets a game for the rest of the season.
All right, next one we got the Seattle Seahawks going to the Tennessee Titans. The spread is a million. The Seahawks have an implied team total of 27 points here, and the Titans have an implied team total of 13.5 points. We'll just start with this. The Titans, no one is fantasy relevant. Great defense they're going up against, and this is not the week we're going to try and extract any Titans value. It's cooked until further notice. So we can just talk about the Seahawks. Jackson Smith the Jigba, it's a no-brainer at this point. The usage is just so good. His target share is obscene. He's really stepped into like he's become an elite wide receiver 1 like before our eyes. Like not just in fantasy too in the NFL. Like he really I think foundationally has changed what the Seahawks offense is. Before with Geno Smith and what we saw last year, like it was okay at points. JSN was nice at points, and then like he busted in the fantasy championship, and I was like, well, at least he got you there, right? Now I feel like the bar has just climbed another couple rungs with this player, and now he's in the conversation with Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua for potentially
Yeah.
being the fantasy MVP at the wide receiver position. Really amazing. We're starting him here. The only maybe thing on this game is maybe the Seahawks blow out the Titans so bad that it's a game where Sam Darnold does not need to pass past the second quarter. We're going to start the running backs here, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I feel like I prefer Ken Walker a little bit to Zach Charbonnet this week. Fantasy managers were waiting, what was it, 7 weeks for this. Ken Walker finally gets in the end zone against the Los Angeles Rams, who, by the way, difficult matchup. Mike McDonald at the podium said that he feels like Kenneth Walker has earned more work. Who knows? Maybe he's on Twitter too, seeing what fantasy managers have been saying about this backfield. But at any rate, matchups don't get better than this. It feels like the Seahawks just bludgeon the Titans here, and it would be a perfect time to get the running backs involved, especially in garbage time, right? Then the DST. I don't think we've ever put a DST ever on this show, but please start the Seahawks DST. They're going to destroy this week. They've got to be like the fantasy defense one on the year, I think, with their crazy clip at
Sure.
which they're scoring defensive touchdowns and
Yeah.
getting sacks and picks. Yeah, so they are like pretty clearly. I don't know. I think that the Seahawks DST is live for anywhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 points this week.
Yep.
I feel like they will produce like a just rock solid RB or wide receiver one this week. So I wanted to shout him out. You know
Yep.
what? We needed to fill in more airtime because we've got nothing for the Titans this week. Then for our sits, it's going to be Cup, Sam Darnold, and AJ Barner. And this is more so that we are calling this a ass kicking that's about to be administered. And we feel like the Seahawks, we've seen it in the games where they just completely dog walk the other team. They just totally let their foot off the gas and just run the ball every play after that. I don't think the Seahawks are going to be in a competitive game or trying to keep it close. I think Sam Darnold might throw under 20 passes in this game. That's not because Sam Darnold sucks, though. It's because the Seahawks are probably going to blow out the Titans here. Do you have anything on this whatsoever? Do you think that we should give Ken Walker his name back instead of just calling the Seahawks RBs the RBs?
No, because he hasn't taken the role back yet. I will tell you, I am making some aggressive purchasing choices on here on the last few days of the trading window on Yahoo. I am trying to get my hands on some Ken Walker for the playoffs. But no, not yet. But he's looked so much better than Charbonnet. I just wonder, dude. The Rams are the number one rush defense in efficiency and in fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and like he went out there and bell cowed on him, you know. So yeah, I'm excited about that as a huge Ken. I told you, dude, I'll make no bones about it. I won't deny it. I think like Ken Walker's up there with one of my 5 favorite players to watch in the NFL. So we'll see. Does he get there? Does he not? I don't know. But he looked really good last week. What do you think? I mean, I guess we could talk to it when we get to a later slide. I have an interesting running back 2 decision in a must-win game. I'll see what you think. It's Kenneth Walker versus someone coming up here. So, okay, God, who knows, man? If Jackson Dart goes into Detroit in their home stadium when Detroit is on the heater of all heaters offensively, I know they had a bad week last week, but overall this year they've just been absolutely baptizing people. If Jackson Dart goes in there and takes it to them as a franchise, it would just be so interesting to me. The Giants with an implied team total of 18.5, going to the Lions with an implied team total of 29. Fun fact, Dan Campbell is like 68% against the spread on games where they did not cover the week before. Something to consider for this week. For the Giants, they have so it looks like Dart is back off concussion protocol. The reporting this week was sort of interesting that they have told him he needs to run less, and they have told the coaching staff they need to run him less. He's had multiple concussion checks, now a long-term or a concussion that took him out for a game already. He's had like multiple other injuries. I don't think his body is going to hold up if they keep running like QB power up the middle with him the way they are. It was like a little different when you had Scattaboo in there because really Scattaboo was like the main thing, and then Dart's runs were coming off of that. Now it's just been like, let's send Dart like he's Cam Newton up the middle. It's starting to take a toll on him a little bit. I still think you just have to start him because in points per game, I think he's like the tight end 2 or 3 this year. He's just been like a ridiculously productive high end tight end one with his legs. So I have a hard time sitting him. We'll reevaluate if things look really bad, if the bottom really falls out of the boat here. Fine. This one's a bit of a hot take. I'm starting Tyron Tracy this week. I think Tyron Tracy has a great shot at a receiving floor here. I think if they get behind, he might become one of their more reliable weapons. Dart loves targeting running back. That's what made Scadaboo the running back 6 at the time of his injury. I think Tracy, I don't want to say he had a little bit of a breakout last week because the usage was actually just 50-50 with Singletary. But I think this game script is going to necessitate a ton of dropping back, and I love him there. And then Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson is the preferred target of Dart. If they're going to score a touchdown this week through the air, I think he's the most likely guy to do it. He's produced like a mid-range tight end one most weeks while he's been with Jackson Dart. I like him a lot here. He is a start for us. We're sitting Devin Singletary. He's touchdown dependent on the goal line. The Detroit Lions running attack has been excellent. They allow I believe, 29th fewest points to running back in the NFL. And then your sort of tricky decisions are going to be wide receivers, mainly Wan'Dale Robinson, but Darius Slayton too. If you guys want a dart throw in DFS, go with some cheap dart throws. I like them both because of the game script. I would actually probably prefer Slayton just because of the way I see the game playing out. Before he got his hamstring injury a week or two ago, Slayton was me and Ted were streaming him left and right with bye weeks and injuries, and he got you like 10.8 half PPR. It's not bad. It's not bad. They're both sort of tricky decisions, though. I think you guys can do better. But if you need an emergency guy, either one of them will do. And then for the Lions, Goff. Goff is indoors, I believe, every game for the rest of the season. So no more what happened in Philadelphia happening. To me, it did not look like a Dan Campbell play calling issue. I saw some people going, well, I guess that's over for the play calling under Dan Campbell. It looked like an execution thing to me. Like Jared Goff was not performing the plays correctly. It looked like without Sam Laporta, they targeted Brock Wright 7 times. Like I don't know if you want to be doing that. To me, it looked like an execution issue, not a play calling issue. That's just my 2 cents on it. Maybe Ted disagrees. And then Gibbs live to be the number 1 overall player in fantasy this week, but I don't think he will be. And here's why. I think Monty is going to be super involved here. This is against the Giants. This is a super friendly game script. He got the mic call out from Dan Campbell, who has one of the highest reliability ratings from Coach Speak Index in the NFL. Remember, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Dan Campbell came out and said, organizationally, we have failed Jameson Williams, and I'm taking over play calling because of it. Since then, Jameson Williams has been like the wide receiver 6 in fantasy the last 3 weeks. So I'm going against, I have a Gibbs roster going against Monty in a matchup that's pretty pivotal for me holding on to the 2 seed in that league. And I'm worried that Monty outscores him here. I think he's totally live to do it. It's just a game script. It's everything. Monty is a must start in your lineups. Get him in there. Amon-Ra, don't need to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then JMO. We're rolling JMO again this week. That is purely just because, dude, he's on the heater of all heaters. And to me, it looks like the offense works really, really well when he gets those big cross-field routes. I guess the big issue was, oh, God damn it. What's their offensive coordinator's name? The old dude that's not good on the Lions.
Horton, I think.
Morton.
Morton. One of those two.
John. No, yeah, whatever. Irrelevant guy who will not matter again after this year. What the big split there was, like, he kept sending JMO on streaks, just go routes down the sideline, and that's not actually what his thing is. His thing is cutting across the field, right? That's where he does his damage. I don't know, man. I feel like Jameson Williams has rounded a real corner here, and that was after me saying 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was livid about this because I was a pretty heavy investor in him in fantasy drafts and in best ball. Like, I kind of said, like, I don't think I'll ever roster him again because it's been such a dissatisfying experience. But the usage does look fundamentally different to me. I think it does change his outlook rest of season. I think his schedule is really good rest of season. And I think he's live here to have another 18-point performance. He's been outscoring Amon-Ra the last 3 to 4 weeks here. So we're going to keep him in our lineups until he really cools off. Do they get so far ahead they don't have to keep passing, and this is the week he really cools off? It's totally possible. Totally within the range of outcomes that it happens, but I'm going to go ahead and roll him out one more week.
Well, I mean, in this particular spot, right, against the New York Giants at home, like, obviously, yes, we're starting all these guys. I feel like, though, I'm not nearly as positive about this Lions offense and what they've been this season as you. I feel like I don't know. Maybe this is a hot take. I think it's ridiculous that Dan Campbell took over the play calling. I think that they were they were second in the league in points per game, and Dan Campbell, a guy who's not a play caller, decided to take over. And I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm stupid. It just feels like a weird meathead decision. We've seen more duds from this Lions offense than I think we saw all of last year. It looks weird to me at points. Gibbs at points is like had like single digit performances. Again, I don't think it's anything here. I'm just on alert though. I'm not sure this Lions team is as much of a wagon as people think. I like JMO as a start this week, and I don't know. I just feel like he always has been a player with variance, right? Elite call out by Yanni last week. Identifying that the Eagles have been weak to those crossers. What happens? JMO hits the big crosser for the only touchdown of the game for the Lions. They're paying him too much money. He has to be involved. I still
Yeah.
think he presents that variance, but I love the start this week. Really, anyone starting against the Giants, I'm in on for sure.
And like you correctly pointed out, right? They are second in the NFL in touchdowns. And I don't know if like we need to look at the Dan Campbell. Like maybe it's not a permanent thing. Maybe he just kind of orients the play calling the way he likes it and then hands it over to the OC to handle it from there. I don't know. Certainly last week was a pretty bad, to have that whole change happen, to have 2 or 3 weeks where things are going well and then to get stonewalled like that. I think it just really comes down to, did that look like an execution issue on the player's part, or did that look like a play calling issue? And I don't know. To me, it looked like an execution issue, but I certainly understand. Like that's not good. That's not good to go out there and just get dudded. Just nothing. They looked like they were an incompetent offense. So
Well, I mean, I've heard some people speculate that the struggle with the Lions offense this year has been a Jared Goff issue. I've heard people saying that Jared Goff is not nearly playing nearly as well as he did last year. Even we all know our Jared Goff splits in Ford Field and away in the outdoors in the cold. We're obviously getting into the winter months, so this would, in theory, be a little bit harder for Jared Goff, but not in this matchup indoors against a bottom five unit. It should be fine. Well, I think we're going to see like a 30-40 burger from the Lions this week, and it's just like if Jackson Dart can keep it close with his magic.
let me just check real quick. They are indoors every game for the rest of the season.
Oh,
So
there you go. All right, next we got another NFC North matchup. We got 9 and the Vikings going to Lambeau to play the Packers. The Vikings have a 17.5 implied team total here. Packers have an implied team total of 24 points. For the Vikings, might be a hot take. We have no straight up starts for you in this game. That being said, we are going to sit 9. Obviously, we're going to sit Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. And then our tricky decisions are going to be Justin Jefferson. I think this is the first time in the history of the show he has not just been directly into the start column. And Aaron Jones. Then for the Packers, again, we have no starts. We have no sits. Everything is a shade of gray this week with the Green Bay Packers and their fantasy relevant options. We're going to put Emmanuel Wilson, Christian Watson, Jordan Love, and Romeo Dobbs as tricky decisions. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. So let's start with the Packers first. I guess quietly, while the Vikings have been notable, like the Vikings have been very loudly bad on the offensive side of the football. Clearly, they've quietly also like been defensively much better over the past month. They've allowed 12.5 half PPR fantasy points to the running back position, and the Packers don't have Josh Jacobs this week. So you're asking, I don't know, like, would you call Emmanuel Wilson one of the better backup running backs in the league? I wouldn't say so. I'd say he's like just a ho hum backup running back, right? He's going to a Vikings team that's played pretty good against the running back. Like we get that the Packers love to run the football to hide Jordan Love in those mistakes, but I don't know. I feel like 7, 8 points is probably the most likely outcome here. I can see, especially if you spent the fab on him, you probably need him. So I don't mind the start this week, but it feels like it might be a little bit of a trap. I don't think we're getting Josh Jacobs type numbers from Emmanuel Wilson in a bell cow role. I think that's for sure. Then we'll do the wide receivers. It feels like the only ones that are fantasy relevant right now are Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. Christian Watson over the past 2 weeks has outperformed Romeo Dobbs. Watson has gotten the touchdowns, and Dobbs has the rest of the season, right, where he's been the primary option for the Packers. It just feels like with Jordan Love playing the shaky brand of football he has been against a Vikings team that has been playing better on defense. And really, let's be honest, these guys have not been smash starts at any point this year. It's like I feel like they're flex consideration, right? I actually have a roster that has both Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs, and it is two flex. And I am starting Romeo Dobbs this week over Christian Watson. I'm sure Yanni might like Christian Watson a little bit more. I'll let him talk about that later. And then Jordan Love, tricky decision. I urged everyone that would listen to me to start Jordan Love last week against the Giants. It did not come home there. I mean, like, what do you get you like 17 fantasy
Seven
points or something?
points.
Like, just
Feels
just
like
not good enough, right? So I don't know. This is a significantly more difficult matchup with the Minnesota Vikings, and I feel like until Jordan Love starts showing you something in the fantasy box score on your bench, I would not rush to start him this week. It just feels like the Packers are okay winning ugly. They don't need Jordan Love to throw 50 times a game, and I think they would prefer not to if they have the option, because they're minimizing mistakes that could be made. Then when we want to talk about the Vikings, I feel like this is in fantasy spheres everywhere. This is like really the talk of the NFL. I would say at this point, with JJ McCarthy, we kind of teased people. Maybe 3 weeks ago, I want to say, when JJ McCarthy came back, it felt like everyone was extremely quick to call JJ a bust. I was kind of like, well, we haven't seen enough. I don't know why people are so quick to like judge this thing, right? But that was an atrocious showing against the Chicago Bears. Like, I just don't know how you can start him in any capacity, and I think that it is officially on the board that he is ruining the fantasy outlooks of everyone around him. So against a pretty good Green Bay Packers defense that held the Philadelphia Eagles to, I believe, 13 points, the Vikings. The Eagles have had their struggles this year, but the Vikings are certainly in a worse spot right now. This is not where nine is going to have a good game and just propel the Vikings to victory. I would be shocked if that's the case. Maybe if he pretends that every single drive is the last drive of the game, we see elite JJ McCarthy. But I'm not projecting that here. One of the things that Kevin O'Connell said is we can't wait for the cement to dry on the foundation we've been building. Why is the cement still drying? I'm out. I'm throwing my hands up. I'm out of the JJ McCarthy business. At least this year, I feel like the Vikings should probably at least be bringing in a quarterback that is like competition. And I think that really like the Vikings should be taking serious looks at guys like Mac Jones in the offseason if they would like to try and be competitive again next year, because it feels like this is a lost year. Nine diatribe aside, right? It just becomes what are we going to do with the passing game options? Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, I just don't think those tertiary, secondary, whatever options are worth a single fuck right now with JJ McCarthy playing the brand of football he is. I would urge you not to start them. I know Jordan Addison had a nice little stretch where he was pretty good. I think he got a touchdown. He did get the touchdown last week on the last drive of the game, but before that, it was horrendous. I'm dodging this if I can. I would urge you guys to dodge it as well. Then for tricky decisions, Justin Jefferson, one of my favorite players in the NFL. I was notorious of saying this year that I thought Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are the same quality of players still, even given Jamar Chase's triple crown last year. It's just so cooked, man. Like he's getting 10 to 12 targets a game and doing nothing with them from JJ McCarthy because JJ McCarthy's targets aren't good. He's not getting catchable balls. He's dropping some like maybe circus catches he could have made before. He's getting frustrated. He's slamming his helmet on the sidelines. He's not chasing after guys on JJ McCarthy interceptions. I've never seen this level of frustration from Justin Jefferson. I've never seen him not be quarterback proof, right? Like he was producing with guys like Nick Mullins and Carson Wentz. He was going over 100 yards regularly. I think we're in trouble, boys. The good news, if you are a JJ or Justin Jefferson bag holder, is that they have one of the easiest schedules for fantasy wide receiver going forward. That being said, though, I'm dinging him down to like a fantasy wide receiver two rest of season. That hopefully his chances are tied to JJ McCarthy not sucking ass the rest of the year. If there is some JJ McCarthy improvement, Justin Jefferson might be a league winner down the stretch, but I don't see it right now. There are people making a lot of like decisions this week. Our friend Yanni here, I believe you're benching Justin Jefferson, aren't you, for Tet McMillan? Which,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's like we're officially getting to the point where I feel like you can make calls, especially if you drafted well and you have a good roster where you could replace people. I think you could this week, and it sucks given how talented Justin Jefferson is, and he's one of my favorite players to watch. But until morale improves, I'm not telling you he's a locked-in starter. And then Aaron Jones, the Packers have been playing really well against the running back, but it feels like Aaron Jones, it is his role. He is getting the passing down work. It's a tough matchup, but I feel like one of the easiest ways to help a struggling quarterback is dump offs to the running back, and they've been doing that in spades to Aaron Jones. I feel like he's like a flex this week, maybe RB2 if you're desperate. I think it's a fine start though. What do you think, man? Was that enough? Shitting on nine?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not out on him as an overall player. I still think there are some tools there that look really good, like some physical tools. I think the issue is like I forget what his high school program was that he went through. He went
IMG, they're the ones that played Bishop Sycamore.
So IMG, so he went through the absolute best of the best in high school. He went through Jim Harbaugh in college. And then he now is under like Kevin O'Connell's dude. Jaron Hall was like slinging it under Kevin O'Connell, right? Like I think there's like a real concern there with if you're getting the best of the best of the best of specifically quarterback management, right? Like Colin Kaepernick was like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL for a little bit under Jim Harbaugh. Like they were making Super Bowl runs with Colin Kaepernick. I just I do think there's like some real concern there. I certainly for this year I don't think he's going to blossom into this 280-yard passer, 300-yard passer for both Justin Jefferson and AJ though after this little 2-game stretch. So they play Green Bay and they play Seattle, right? Which is just such a tall. I believe they're away for both of those games too. I think the Seattle game's at Seattle. That is such a tall task for these guys, right? So I'm expecting down weeks on both. They will both be switched out of my lineup and rosters where they have been a fixture in there. But after that, I think it's wheels up. I think that the C's part as far as the quality of defense that I almost don't care how bad JJ McCarthy looks. I think both of those guys have a chance to truly smash down the road. So if you guys still have your trade window open until Sunday is the Yahoo cutoff. If you guys still have it open, I actually would be sending offers on both of them. And then for the Packers, I obviously do prefer Christian Watson. I'm a big Christian Watson guy. He's looked really good coming back from injury. He's been like a RB or wide receiver 2-3 border guy. I think he's around like 11 points a game since he came back. So I just don't like the matchup. The matchup is what really freaks me out here. I don't know if you want to be attacking a Brian Flores defense with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs with Jordan Love at the helm. Okay, I have been seeing people left and right streaming the Raiders defense in the free Tendies fantasy leagues. I believe the Raiders defense got picked up in every single free Tendies fantasy league. Anticipating the Shedeur Sanders Browns starting debut. The Browns with an implied team total is 16.5. The Raiders with an implied team total of 20. For the Browns, I know Quinshon Judkins has really cooled off the last few weeks in terms of yards per carry, in terms of touchdowns, in terms of production. It's been pretty rough because teams are absolutely stacking the box. Shedeur Sanders looks like he's a little bit mobile with his legs last week. He looked like a spry little fella with me to me when he got the ball out and started moving with it. So I wonder if the read option is going to be on the table here. The Raiders actually surprisingly are not a trash defense. They're just sort of middle of the road, which is a pretty big testament to Pete Carroll. And I think his son is on the defensive staff there. So I don't think this is like some trash matchup. I just have a hard time sitting Quinshon Judkins against the Oakland Raiders, especially when he might get 25 touches this week. I think he's totally live to do that. Your sits are going to be Shedeur Sanders and everyone else. Harold Fannin Jr. is a guy that I've been holding out hope on. I got in a weird spot where I ended up starting Harold Fannin Jr. for like half the year in me and Ted's home league, which is the most important league to me. I messed up at tight end. I went and got David Njoku in round 10 and it did not work out. And then I preferred Fannin to him a little bit. I had Zach Ertz in there for a while, who obviously fell off with the Jaden Daniels thing. Like it's been a whole mess. I don't want with Shador throwing there. And honestly, like, I don't even want to clog up a roster spot by holding David Njoku and Harold Fannin. Like, I think they should be dropped and they should be sat this week. For the Raiders, you're starting Brock Bowers. You're always starting Brock Bowers. Generational talent gets thrown around too often. That is a generational talent at tight end. If they can just figure out how to get the fucking ball out of Geno's hands, like, he should be fine. And you're going to sit Geno Smith. I don't really want to attack this Browns off defense. They're pretty good. Even though they're on the road, there are some splits there. Geno's just looked so bad. And against this O-line, the holy hell that Myles Garrett and his abnormally large hog that's been all over social media this week are about to wreck on this Raiders team. Dude, that thing freaked me out, dude. Like, you do the thing where you look at the picture and you're like, what? For some reason, he did an interview in a bath towel. I don't know why he did that. It was really, it's really emasculating for like 6 different reasons. But he might get like, that guy is live for 5 or 6 sacks this week. I mean, seriously, like, what did he have? 3 or 4 last week? If you can stream the Cleveland Browns defense, which I've seen on a lot of waiver wires, I think just on sacks alone, man, we're live here. So Geno Smith is going to take a beating. He's a sit. I guess this is a hot take, but maybe it's not. Your sort of tricky decision is going to be Ashton Genty. The Browns are a stout rushing defense. They are a very good rush defense, more so at home than on the road. But I just don't know. The target volume was really encouraging last week with Ashton Genty, and I loved the prospect. I thought he was the best running back prospect like since Bijan and Gibbs. I thought he would be that caliber of player. I still think he might be that caliber of talent. But, dude, when you're missing your 2 best linemen for the Raiders, right, the left side of their O-line is out, and this thing's looking as bad as it is, and Geno can't push the ball downfield, and Brock Bowers, as good of a weapon as he is, he's more of an intermediate to short range weapon, right? Just by the nature of being a tight end. It creates this situation where the offense just gets suffocated, right? And I'm watching Ashton trying to run plays last week, and like, dude, he's getting a pitch and he's automatically running backwards off the line of scrimmage and getting hit like 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage trying to get out to the sideline. There's just no room. He's taking a handoff and he's getting hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I don't think Ted bought any of him, and I bought none of him. None. 45 best ball rosters. I think I have 1 or 2 Ashton Genty, and then redraft, none. This was a guy that we as like a podcast, as a group, kind of stayed away from for the year, in large part for me. I don't know about Ted's, just in general more cautious around rookies. For me, it was purely just, I just don't like this offense. And I think the bill has come due with Ashton Genty on this thing. With his schedule coming up, dude, I think we're live to see him potentially drop into like an RB3 conversation. I would start Woody Marks over him. I would start Travis Etienne over him. I would certainly be starting, like, I wouldn't start Alvin Kamara over him, but I won't be surprised if he outscores him. If Trey Benson comes back for Arizona, I would start Trey Benson over him. I prefer Aaron Jones. It's just like, it's that sort of thing, dude. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be there. I'm worried we're going to see a lot of single-digit games to round out the year.
I got to take some accountability here because I was actually way higher on Genty and I just didn't get any of them. Like, just the way drafts went. Like,
Yeah.
what happened for me this year is all of like the really elite running backs that I wanted kind of got pushed up. And because that was happening, some of like the wide receivers that I really wanted that were in my top tier, like CD Lamb and Justin Jefferson, I was pinging those guys in the first round the entire time.
You were a big Puka guy too.
Well, I was pinging Puka round 2, but like in that first round, right? So like my preseason is I absolutely would have taken Genty over Derrick Henry, and that was not close to me. So because I was more optimistic about this Raiders offense. The entire thing has been really disappointing to me. So I lucked out. I just got lucky. That's all it is. That happens sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like, yes, Geno has been dog shit the majority of the year. This is not the matchup that you want to attack, but
No.
I'm still slightly optimistic about maybe some spots that Geno might be emergency startable. The fact of the matter is the Raiders pass at the highest rate in neutral game scripts of any team in the league. This is a Geno Smith football team, make no mistake. Has that been good for the Raiders? Has that been a winning formula in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not, but that just kind of is what it is. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe even Trey Tucker might be fantasy relevant. We didn't put him on here, though, but he's really the wide receiver 1 on Oakland, isn't he?
Yeah, now to be fair for us, we did tell you guys to start him last week, and he had like 12 or 13 half PPR points. So,
Yeah,
we got
it's just
that.
we're not starting him against Denzel Ward. No, is
No.
the main thing, right? No, no, no.
No, the guy that blanks Jamar Chase. I'm not really interested in the dude who blanks Jamar Chase guarding Trey Tucker, who, by the way, I think still has the number one overall game for wide receiver this year. I believe he has the number one overall game besides the Jonathan Taylor explosion. Believe he has the number one overall game for receiver and the second overall game in fantasy this year. So
Yeah, and game number three, the Raiders are responsible for two of the three highest scoring games in
really,
fantasy this year. Yeah, the Bowers one against the Jags was the other one. All right, this one, I don't really know what to make of this game. I really don't like the spot either of these teams are in, but it is what it is. Let's get into it. Jaguars going into Arizona to play the Cardinals. The Jaguars have an implied team total of 25 points, and the Cardinals have an implied team total of 22.5 points. For the Jags, we're going to start Travis Etienne and we're going to start Trevor. We're going to start the prince that was promised here. We're going to sit Parker Washington. It was a goaded 2 week Linsanity run, but it's over. And then we're going to tricky decision the wide receivers that matter in Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr. Then for the Cardinals, I mean, for the fantasy relevant options, we're going to it's wheels up, I guess. Trey Benson, if he goes. Trey McBride, he's had a really awesome run here with Jacoby Brissett. Michael Wilson, we're getting another week of no Marvin Harrison Jr. and I think Michael Wilson went through like 180 yards last week against the Niners or something crazy. And then we're going to start Jacoby Brissett. And let's start with the Cardinals first. And I'll start with Jacoby Brissett first because I have made a very large move this week. I have Justin Herbert on bye in one league, and my plan was to roll Caleb Williams this week against the Steelers. And I was thinking about it, and I was sitting there, and Jacoby Brissett was just sitting on waivers waiting for me to get him. I had like my IR spot full and just a couple other things. I ended up ultimately what I did is I dropped Isaiah Pacheco, who is just a ball and chain that's held me down all year, to get Jacoby Brissett to start him in this spot against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's the sales pitch, man. Jacoby Brissett, he completed the most passes, I believe, in NFL history last week against the 49ers in a single game. It was 47 passes completed. And the Jaguars, I believe, are bottom three in yards allowed in the air. They're kind of like a pass funnel defense, you could say. And the Cardinals have been super willing, especially with the running back injuries, to just throw it everywhere with Jacoby Brissett in negative game scripts as well. I just think that he is super live to have another 20 plus point week, and I think that's totally QB oneable. If you're in a pinch like me, you're a Justin Herbert roster, you're a I don't know who of the other quarterbacks, but if you need a quarterback this week, I think Jacoby Brissett is totally doable. I don't even think that Jacoby Brissett at this point should be on waivers. It looks significantly better than when Kyler Murray is there, and being in a Trey McBride offense, I think clearly helps. Let's see. Trey McBride, I don't think we need to talk about that. He's just elite at the position. And the touchdown equity has gone significantly up with Jacoby Brissett. I think that he's probably my tight end one rest of season. I was a Brock Bowers truther, but given the offensive climate, it feels like I prefer Trey McBride now rest of season. Trey Benson, if he goes, is going to be a start for us this week. He got a limited in, and it seems like it's questionable whether or not he'll go, right? Amari DiMercato is not going this week. Bam Knight has a high ankle that he's nursing. He might go, but I don't think that really matters if Trey Benson goes. Trey Benson, like, he looked explosive earlier in the year when he got touches, I guess. He's coming off a meniscus, so it is concerning. But this Jaguars defense isn't very good. It feels like the Cardinals are desperately needing like talent at places to get the ball. I think Trey Benson is totally fine as a flex decision this week if he comes back and you need it. If Trey Benson doesn't go, then I'm not really chasing the Michael Carter Bam Knight situation. I would assume maybe it's more Michael Carter this week because of the injury, but at that point, I'm not risking that. And then Michael Wilson, he's just kind of produced his Marvin Harrison Jr. light with Jacoby Brissett. He's clearly getting the most targets. He made the most of them that last week against a not very good 49ers secondary. This Jaguars secondary is not very good either. I'm not expecting 180 yards, but I think that 15, 16 points is totally doable for him this week. Then for the Jaguars, I don't know, man. This Cardinals defense has just been tough to watch the past couple weeks, getting dog walked by the Niners and the Hawks. And the Jaguars have been extremely run heavy. So Travis Etienne, perfectly acceptable start this week. It looks like Bashal Tutin probably doesn't go with his ankle. So I think we're live to see anywhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 25 touches from Travis Etienne. It seems like it seems like what the Jaguars are doing is they're trying to minimize Trevor mistakes, and they're really just like a run first football team at this point. That's at least what we've seen for the past 2 weeks. So I think Travis Etienne is a rock solid RB2 this week against a gettable defense. Trevor, I feel like he's a better fantasy asset than he is like a real life player. At this point, he has a lot of like QB rushing touchdowns. He doesn't pass for very many yards, but this Cardinals team has just gotten destroyed the past couple weeks. He's like a back end quarterback one to me. I think it's fine. I don't love the start, but this is a plus matchup. I think you could do it. Then for the wide receivers, it it looks like Brian Thomas Jr. might go this week. I'm not sure. He got limited in all of last week and did not play. He opened up Wednesday with a limited practice, so I think it's a true 50-50 whether or not he goes. I have no idea, right? So the way we're going to break it down is this: if Brian Thomas Jr. plays, then I think that him and Jacoby Myers are like a weird kind of, I guess you could chase Trevor Lawrence passing yards here, but it seems like a tougher shout to me. If Brian Thomas Jr. does not play, then I'm way more interested in Jacoby Myers. He's outproduced Parker Washington sizably since he's gotten to town. I think at that point, Jacoby Myers would be a rock solid flex if Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't play. And then Parker Washington, it's just not great usage. It's not great production. Like he had that nice week against the Texans, but part of that was that he returned a punt for a touchdown. He's just not that great of a player, and quite frankly, that Jaguars passing pie is pretty small right now. It seems like Liam Cohen wants to be run first. I would not be surprised if Liam Cohen brings in a new quarterback next year. But yeah, we're not starting Parker Washington. What do you think, man? Did I get it?
Yeah, I mean, it does look like actually Tootin's on the right side of questionable because he got in today in practice, but he's certainly questionable nonetheless. ETN has actually been a running back 1 in 6 out of the 10 weeks this season. So, I think if ETN is playing, you're starting him really in most circumstances. I just do wonder what that split looks like, dude. That thing was a true 50-50 before Tootin went down. And then like ETN, I think has had like somewhere in the double digits. I forget how many touches in the red zone and yielded very few touchdowns. Tootin is really, really good on the goal line. So I am wondering if towards the end of the season we see ETN cool off in a pretty big way. But for this week, I'm not worried about it. And then I do love Trevor Lawrence and Brissett as streamers. Okay, interesting fun fact about this game. The Falcons going to the New Orleans Saints. The Falcons with an implied team total of 20. The Saints are favored to win the game with an implied team total of 21.5. The interesting thing about this game is the New Orleans Saints are the only team in the NFL to not allow a 100-yard rusher this season, which is pretty surprising. I feel like they're a pretty garbage team, but I guess their run defense is at least not allowed prolific rushing. For the Falcons, I honestly think this is going to be the case for the rest of the year, sadly. It looks like Drake London ripped to my 33% roster exposure in best ball. It looks like Drake London is going to miss 2 to 4 weeks here. And even after the 2 to 4 weeks, one, there's no guarantees back at the end of it. Two, he has been a back end wide receiver 3. So on the wide receiver 3-4 borderline with Kirk Cousins throwing to him over the last 2 years. It's really unfortunate. He had 3 out of the 4 weeks before he got injured. He was the wide receiver 1 overall. The week he got injured in the first half, he had 7 catches for 105 yards, and then it's all over. That is just the nature of fantasy football. I do think it's going to lead to some pretty serious volume for Bijan, but I think the offense gets a lot worse overall. So to me, at best, it's a wash. If anything, like I'm kind of leaning toward Bijan taking a hit. The only thing is he's not really dependent on the touchdown equity in the offense because he doesn't have a ton of it. He's really a receiving work guy. Does Kirk Cousins, does it become a thing where his best option is to dump off to Bijan? That's sort of interesting to me. I would just say I'm treating it like there's no difference here. I've seen some people say Bijan to the moon. He's going to get 6 to 10 targets a game rest of the season. I've seen other people say you need to run and sell Bijan. I sort of think it's there's mitigating and agitating factors here. They go either way. I'm just kind of treating it like it's meh. We are going to sit Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney had a soft as baby shit matchup without Drake London earlier in the year with Kirk Cousins against the Miami Dolphins. He failed to deliver. He got good volume last week. He failed to deliver all year. He's just failed to deliver. He came into the year with a month-long shoulder injury. He's had 2 or 3 times he's cropped up with hamstrings on the injury report. I just think his body's a little beat up this year. Good receiver, good like NFL average level player, but he hasn't shown it this season. Your sort of tricky decisions are going to be Pitts and Algier. Pitts is purely a volume play at tight end, especially in your full PPR leagues. I think he will get at least enough targets and probably enough catches to get you there in full PPR. For Algier, this is basically just that it's a game where they're capable of taking the lead. The defense is certainly good enough. They've been repping Algier a lot inside the red zone. I think he's live to fall in the end zone and get a touchdown. I have a roster that is now without. It had Cam Scatterbo go down. It's now lost Devon Achane to a bye, and it's going to have Drake London out at the flex. I'm probably going to end up having to flex Tyler Algier. But like that's kind of the reason you roster players like this is like, look, if you put them in there, yeah, you're probably going to get 5 to 7 points. That's probably the most likely outcome. But you can get in the end zone. You can get in the end zone and get you a little double digits and half PPR. So I think it's fine. I certainly would not shoehorn him in your lineups. For the Saints, Juwan Johnson is a sort of tricky decision only because the Falcons are the number one pass defense in the NFL, number one in pass DVOA, and number one against the tight end. They specifically destroy tight ends. So, they have really good safeties, really good coverage linebackers. So Juwan Johnson, I don't know what I'm expecting out of him this week. But I kind of think the volume's been good enough that you should keep starting him, but you may have better options there. I'm trying to think of like some tight end 2 borderline guys that I would prefer. I don't even know who's on the tight end 2 borderline. Like Goddard, I would prefer Goddard over him if you're going to start him. But it's like I just think you can start Juwan. And then your starts are going to be Olave and Kamara. Kamara's had a pretty dismal year all year. I just think he's getting enough work. All of a sudden, he had like a 25-plus touch game. Dude, just the nature of buys and injuries and the running back position this year, I think you kind of have to keep rolling Kamara out your RB2 unless you have a much better option there. Unfortunately, I got him as a throw-in on a trade, and I lost a third of my roster to injury the next week, and now I'm just stuck with Kamara at RB2 and an immaculate roster. It's annoying. But I think with the volume, he's good enough. And like I think Atlanta's pass defense is so good. He's live for checkdowns. I think Shuck looked pretty good, which helps. And then Olave. Olave has been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in terms of usage, XFP, expected fantasy points per game. Just good. I think he's a good player. It's never the player, right? It was always the injuries that were the problem. And now he's getting the usage, and Shuck looked competent. I don't know. The Atlanta pass defense has been so good. I think that comes back around, and I didn't think a whole lot of Shuck as a player coming out, but he looked pretty good last week. If he comes out and looks good again this week, I think you have to be excited about holding Saints receiving bags, particularly the 2 that are on our slide here. That's it, though. Boring game. Boring, horrible football. Thank God we don't have to watch it. It's tucked away, I believe, in the afternoon slate. Just ugh.
Yeah, I got nothing on this one. I don't have any fantasy bags on it. Kirk Cousins is just completely cooked. I don't know. Well, you know what? We'll see how Shuck looks because this Falcons team just allowed Bryce Young to throw for 400 on them. I don't know if they're good at any level. The Atlanta Falcons are. We'll see though. I think Raheem Morris is for sure gone though at the end of the year. No way he survives. All right, big game here. Huge game in Jerry World. We got the Philadelphia Eagles going to visit the Dallas Cowboys. This is a shocking spread to me. Guess what, boys? I'm going to be on Philly here on the gambling show. I do not care. Philly with an implied team total of 25.5 points, and the Cowboys with an implied team total of 22 points. For the Eagles, it is all of the fantasy relevant guys. We are starting them because this is the Dallas Cowboys, the most exciting team for any fantasy manager to either have bags on or be playing any given week. So it is Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. They're fire them up. I think they're around where they've been this year, if not bump them up a couple spots because the Cowboys are so trash. Then for the Cowboys, this one's a little bit different. We're going to start CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, elite wide receiver duo. As it turns out, like I feel like they're in the conversation with probably like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at this point as being like one of the elite wide receiver duos in the league, which is sick. I really like how George Pickens has kind of emerged here. Crazy what a decent quarterback can do for you. We're going to start Javonte Williams here. We're going to start Jake Ferguson. And then this is like the hot take. I think Dak is a tricky decision this week, and I would lean sit with him. But I think he's like the fantasy quarterback 5 or 6 on the year. So this is kind of a heady call, calling him a sit. But I feel like it has to be said, right? And we'll start with the Dallas Cowboys first. I think that makes the most sense to me. So week one, the Cowboys had all their guys. CD hadn't been injured yet. This is effectively like the same offensive unit that was going against Philly week one. I'm pulling it up right now, so I have the exact number. Dak Prescott, week one against Philadelphia, had 7.82 fantasy points, 188 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. This Philadelphia team is just destroying teams defensively. I feel like we're getting into the territory with Philly now where it's like win at any cost, kind of like the Chiefs were the past couple of years, right? They're winning all these gross games where their offense doesn't look good, but their defense is just suffocating teams. And as much as we can get excited about the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think they're the quality of the Detroit Lions offense still. I don't know. Like, it feels tough to me. They are indoors. That does help the Cowboys, but I think Dak Prescott is live to be under 15 points this week. I'm playing an opponent in one of the free Tendies leagues that's starting Dak Prescott and the George Pickens stack, and I'm stoked on it. I'm like, thank God he's starting that stack this week because I feel like it's really going to underperform given how good Philly is playing, but we're still starting CD and George Pickens though just because they've been so good, right? Like it, they could still get their yards. They might. One of them will probably get a touchdown. I don't think they will both deliver. And I think they both might even be under expectation, but I think they're still startable. You just kind of maybe knock them down a peg or where you would usually have them. Javonte Williams, to me, he's like a back end start this week, but he is still a start. He looked pretty good against the Raiders on Monday night, who have been done an admirable job against the rush. I'm telling you though, man, this Philly defense with Jalen Carter and now Jalen Phillips, who they just traded for, they look fierce up front. Like I feel like Javonte Williams is more of a flex to me, but the body of his work this year has been so good, and it's just his backfield, right? So we're still starting him here. And then Ferguson, I believe he's the fantasy tight end 3-ish on the year. He's been good. Like obviously the math changes with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens in there, so he's not getting as crazy volume as he was. But I think he's still like a back end tight end one this week against a just fierce Philly defense, man. Like knock down all your Cowboys like expectations. I think a peg or two here. This Philly defense is for real, in my opinion. Then for the Eagles, there's not much here, right? The Dallas Cowboys just stink. Their defense just stinks. Jalen Hurts, it's looked really rough for him. Whether or not it's a offensive coordinator issue, whether or not it's a Jalen Hurts issue, I don't really know. I'm not super confident in telling you exactly what's wrong with the Philadelphia offense, right? But Jalen Hurts has the rushing upside. He always is going to have that. It feels like with Lane Johnson out, they might have to run or they might have to throw a little bit more because it feels like maybe it's not as easy to run in this game. I think that Jalen Hurts is live to give you an elite quarterback 1 week here, as most teams against the Dallas Cowboys get to experience. Saquon's a start. I think he's in the top 10 this week for running backs. I know maybe that's a hot take or whatever, but the Dallas Cowboys are trash. He's an explosive player. We've seen flashes this year against bad defenses. Like he had the really good game against the Giants the second time around. I don't know. What I've seen on the field from Saquon this year is not a Saquon has fallen off issue. It doesn't look like Saquon's even really lost a step to me. It just feels like the offense in Philly is just bizarre and weird for whatever reason, and teams are stacking the box to try and stop Saquon. But still an RB1 for me this week, and maybe I'm a little bit more bullish on him than the market, but I think that's fine. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, both starts here. I understand having bags in the Philly passing game has been frustrating this year. We had a nice month-long stretch where Devontae Smith was like a producing like a wide receiver one. Then he comes out last week and gives you one fantasy point, and AJ Brown gets all the targets. The Cowboys do play a lot of zone, and traditionally AJ Brown has not been as good versus zone, and Devontae Smith is better. I feel like I prefer Devontae Smith a little bit to AJ Brown this week, but I think they're both like that thing we've been saying all year, right? High variance players. They're explosive and they're really good. It's just like, do they actually get work in this game? I feel like they will. I think they're fine to start this week. And then Dallas Goddard, apparently he's just like the most has the most touchdown equity on the team. Tight end is already rough. I think he's anywhere in the neighborhood of like tight end 6 to 8 this week against a very gettable Cowboys defense. What do you think, man?
Saquon is the ECR wide receiver 5 this week.
RB5?
Also, yeah, also Saquon has the easiest schedule for running back going forward. My worst roster, which is I'm very proud. Okay, across 12 leagues, I have 2 rosters that aren't in the playoffs. They're both the 7 seed, and it's Saquon is the centerpiece of one of them, and that's my worst roster. Which is look, man, it's been a great year. If your worst roster is the 7th seed and Saquon and your first round pick hasn't really produced yet, that's a great position to be in. And I'm looking forward. I'm actually like thrilled about what's coming for the second half of the season here for Saquon. I understand losing Lane Johnson is a huge deal. In my opinion, he is the best right tackle in the history of the NFL. The history of the NFL. He's right there. Penei Sewell may give him a run when it comes down to it, but he's like as good. Like there's Hall of Famers, but then there's like guys who define their position for a decade or a generation, not just like at a Hall of Fame level, but a generational talent, which gets thrown around too much. Lane Johnson actually is that. But what I'm wondering is, does that force them, because they were terrible in yards before contact per rush attempt anyway, with Lane Johnson in there. I'm wondering if that forces them to use Saquon as a passing option way more, which frankly, that's great. Get him in space and let him make some moves. The defenses that he's facing for the rest of the season are so incredibly soft. I just wonder. I wonder if we're live here for like a nice run of 6 to 7 weeks of 20-point per game Saquon production. I hope so. I need it if I'm going to make the playoffs in that roster. I have a sneaky little goal this year to try to be 12 of 12 in the free Tendies leagues on making the playoffs, which would be a huge achievement. But if I'm going to do it, I need Saquon to step up. And I think that's it. I'm pretty stunned, to be very honest with you, even as like a 30 to 40% Pickens roster guy. I'm pretty stunned that he is the wide receiver 4 on the year. That's like insanity to me. He has outscored CD since they've both been on the field together. To me, that's like one big game, right? Really swung that. I still would prefer CD Lamb, and I'm very curious to see what happens with that this week. We'll see, but I think Quinyon Mitchell covered George Pickens for most of the last game. I think we're in for like a big CD week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see George have a down week here. So
Yeah, so the first time these teams played, Quinion shadowed George Pickens for the first half, and that's where CD almost had 100 yards in the half. And then the second half, he started going on CD, and then Pickens was getting the yards, right? Also important to note, CD is coming off a high ankle, right? We always tell you guys that it takes any skill position player a little bit to get back to full speed off these high ankles. So I saw some people saying that George Pickens is now the wide receiver 1 in Dallas and CD is the wide receiver 2. That's insane. No, it's just that George Pickens is finally allowing the talent that he's always had to
yep.
flourish, right? And that's what happens when you don't have the mess that the Pittsburgh Steelers are rolling out for all the years he was there. Significantly better situation for him.
Yeah, I've been wondering if Kelsey retires next year, do they go get George Pickens to put with Rashee Rice for Patrick Mahomes? Been thinking about that. Well, I wonder where he ends up going next year. I don't think he's going to stay on the Cowboys unless they tag him, and I don't know if
I
he's going.
think they're gonna tag him. That's
Do
such
you
a Jerry move. It's
do
such a
you
Jerry
think
move.
you think he's going to play on the tag, that mentally ill individual? I
When you get tagged, right, you have to play a minimum amount of games for
yeah.
it to count, or they
Well,
just tag you again.
it's not even tag. It's even worse. It voids your year of your contract. So they just treat it like you didn't show up for work, and your contract just gets pushed a year. You can't like sit it out. It's really not looking forward to the news that that George Pickens has had a hip flexor after sitting out for fucking 2 months and is out for 9 weeks next year. Yeah, been thinking a lot about how that situation comes to a head. Okay, a huge game for the Buccaneers season. Like, I don't want to say season on the line. That's too far because they're soft division, right? But like, I don't know. The Panthers keep somehow winning games, and all of a sudden, it's put a little bit of pressure on Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, who like can't quite get all the way healthy here. Obviously, Mike Evans at best is going to be back week 16 or 17. Chris Godwin is almost certainly going to miss this week, although he did open up the week questionable. Bucky Irving's been limited twice this week, but he didn't really get a full go in practice. He did like a walkthrough. So I don't know. I don't know who's going here for the Bucks, but the Buccaneers with a 21.5 implied team total going to LA to face the Rams at home in SoFi Arena, an arena that me and Theodore are familiar with after going down there for the championship. It's probably the coolest field I've ever been in. It's like partially underground. There's a rich people section with like elevators and security to get down on the base floor, right? It's just awesome. I, I don't know. I'll be curious to hear what Ted thinks about this. I think there's a very real argument that the Rams are the best team in football right now. I'll leave it to him at the end of the slide. He can think about his answer while I'm going through it. But for the Buccaneers, this is a defense that's been pretty vulnerable through the air. I know Egbuka has been getting the bracketing treatment lately, and he has not been able to shake free of it the last few games. But look, he had 2 hamstring games going into their bye, comes out of the bye and has a 20+ point half PPR performance, and then sort of duds on you last week. He's still getting such incredible usage from such an incredible offensive ecosystem. I think that he's going to come around towards the end of the year in a big way here. We know that rookie production tends to be stacked up in the last 4 to 8 weeks of a season, tends to be where they disproportionately get their percentage of fantasy points for the year. And if that's true for Emeka Egbuka, we could see something pretty crazy. Now, typically that is because they get a better role by the end of the year, and Emeka Egbuka's had as good of a role as you can get. So I wouldn't expect to see the same type of rookie explosion towards the stretch run here. But I still think he's got another step to kind of develop. And as players get back in the offense, we're going to see it more and more. I still love him this week, though. I think he's totally live to have a nice 20-point half PPR game here. And then Cade Otton, tough matchup last week with the really tough defense on tight ends. I still think he's getting really good volume. It looks like Godwin's going to sit. It looks like no Mike Evans is going to sit. That's a tight end one. So those are all starts for you. Baker, Egbuka, Otton. Your sort of tricky decisions. This one was more of me pushing for this than Ted. Look, if Bucky comes back, you have to start Bucky. He's a stud running back in the NFL. That's it. I don't care if it's the best defense against fantasy running backs in the NFL. If Bucky misses, I think you have to start Sean Tucker coming off of a 38 or whatever it was. I think it was 33 point fantasy performance last week, which he was in my flex in the league, which was fun. I think you have to start him if Bucky doesn't go. I think Rachaad White's going to get his reps. The issue for me is where these guys become sort of tricky decisions all across the board is if Bucky goes. I think it'll only be a 1 week thing, but they want to ease him in. He's had some soft tissue issues, right? Which is like both historically and recently. That's the big concern when he starts running full speed in the NFL again. He hasn't been full speed for what is it, like 6 or 8 weeks now. I would just proceed with caution, right? Like I said, I think if he goes, you have to go, but I would sit the other 2 running backs if Bucky's in. And I wouldn't expect a whole lot from old Bucky boy just this week. I just think there's going to be a weird 3-headed committee for 1 week when he's back. So, and this is a terrible defense to do it against. It's wheels up for the rest of the season, though. If you have him after this, like you might have been able to trade for pennies on the dollar for a top 5 running back to close out the year. And then for the Rams, it's been pretty straightforward here. Puka, Kyren, Devontae Stafford. Devontae Adams is a monster in the red zone. Kyren is not getting that 80% workload he was getting a couple years ago, but he's still getting a rock solid 65, 67%. And he has looked better than Corum on a per touch basis. It's been close, but he does look better and he does get the red zone work. So that's it. Kyren's Kyren's the most boring RB1 in the world besides DeAndre Swift for the rest of the season. That's just going to be what it is. And then Puka, some good news on the Puka front. Higbee is headed to the IR for like the 19th time in his career. That 13 personnel was seeing Puka come off the field for Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams was getting targeted on 64% of his routes out of 13 personnel. So it was like this concerted effort they made where they pulled Puka out and had Devontae. They preferred Devontae on those, which is weird to me, but they did. And that actually had affected that monster ceiling from Puka. We weren't seeing like that top 3 weekly expected fantasy points per game because of it. I would imagine now with Higbee out, we see them go back to the 2 wide receiver sets. We see Puka get back that usage. I'm looking forward to a really productive rest of the season for him, where he's a locked and loaded top 3 wide receiver from here on out. And then a DFS streamer here is Ferguson, their rookie Terrence Ferguson, who's looked really good in moments this year, but just has not gotten the full run. With Higbee out, I think that actually clarifies this tight end unit a little bit. The Rams use tight end at one of the most prolific rates in the NFL, both in terms of expected fantasy points and snap rate. Stafford throws a lot of touchdowns to tight ends, and he's been playing really well. If you want to be a little cheeky in DFS, I would imagine he'll be like $2,400 to $2,800 at tight end, maybe even $2,000. I like him a lot on DraftKings this week.
Yeah, I agree, man. For the Rams, I think they're in the conversation for being the best team in the NFC. I went on record last week and I said there's a sizable gap between the Rams and the Seahawks. And one of the things that I said about the Seahawks is I said the quarterback isn't good enough. It kind of rolled out almost like I thought, but it feels like the Rams let the Seahawks stay in that game. Like if you pick off Sam Darnold 4 times, you it shouldn't be close, right? So I think the Rams could absolutely beat almost any team in the NFL. I think that they like are weird and let other not as good teams stay in the game, but I think I certainly think that the Rams are better than the Lions. I think the Rams are better than the Seahawks. I think they're better than the Bucks, so I think they'll win this game. The team I don't know if they'd beat is Philly. They already lost to them once this year. Obviously, it was that weird game where blocked field goal and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
seems like until further notice, I'm not expecting Philly to lose football games, even though it looks weird. But yeah, man. And then for the Bucks, you know, Igbuka has like and Baker really have both kind of struggled. It does feel like it's like the bracketing coverage that's like messing with them. But the good news is the Rams secondary is trash. They got
Yep.
like Emmanuel Forbes out there and like not very good players. That's how you attack them. I
Yep.
do think if Bucky goes, I'd like to just see it first. I have a roster that has Trey Benson and Woody Marks and Bucky Irving on it, and it's like a super stacked roster. I think I have a 90% chance to win this week based on Yahoo projections. It's like a 50-point advantage I have on the other guy. I'm rolling Bucky out there as a ceremonial start because I missed
Hey,
him so much. But I feel like if I had to start Woody Marks instead, or I had to start Trey Benson instead for this week, it would be fine given the first week back and all the the injury stuff he's been dealing with. I do think he does come back this week though, since he had the whole last week where he was limited. It feels like this is going to be the week they roll him out.
do you think there's any concern with like has Sean Tucker looked good enough, do you think, to like take early down or red zone work?
No,
Because in the beginning of the year, I believe Bucky was rushing for 2.6 yards per carry, but that was without Tristan Wirfs. Um, do you feel like they just go right back to workhorse role for him?
I
Not
I,
this week.
I
Not
would
this week.
think so. Yeah,
Okay.
like I mean, Sean Tucker has what like 2 nice weeks. Like he popped
The,
off against the Bills, but I don't. If he Wally pips Bucky, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. It would be like the
it's
third backfield he gets Wally pipped.
it's not even that. It's just this weird degree of efficiency he's shown with carries. Like Sean Tucker is actually a weird. His explosivity rate, yards, carries over 10 yards, is actually the best of any active running back in football. And then the only two starts he's ever gotten as a running back, he was a high end RB1 in both of them. So he just has this weird thing that he's been doing where he's looked good. And then, like, the Buccaneers clearly like platooning running backs. But that wasn't what happened in the beginning of the year. Remember we were telling people to go out and trade for Bucky and I was thrilled about him or whatever. It's because he was like a bell cow. Bucky came out to start this year with like 25 touches a game. So but he looked really bad on the ground in there. It was all mostly receiving production was how he was getting. So I was just wondering if there's any concern there. I'm trying to buy on him. I'm sending my last minute offers on Yahoo all over, trying to get him off people's rosters. So I agree with you. I was just curious what you.
All right, last one of the week, Monday Night Football. Very significant game for me because it is my two favorite teams in the NFL facing against each other. As a second fan, we always have to keep in mind that we're only second fans as long as the second team's interests do not collide with your primary team's interests. Unfortunately, this week, my Carolina Panthers are trying to collide directly with my 49ers interests in prime time. So I hope the Niners win by 35 this week. We got the Panthers, 20.75 implied team total, going to Levi's to play the Niners, 27.75 implied team total. For the Panthers, we're going to start Tedero McMillan, Yanni's favorite player in the entire NFL this week. We're going to start Rico Dowdle. That guy has just totally cucked me this year from a fantasy perspective. And then Bryce Young, actually going to be a solid week to start Bryce Young. We are declaring, and then we're going to tricky decision Chuba Hubbard. I feel like that's just to taunt me. I drafted Chuba Hubbard fourth round in League One, and everything kind of. I had so many busted picks in League One. It's crazy. Chuba was really the start of that domino effect. Then for the Niners, we're going to start Brock Purdy. We're going to start Christian McCaffrey. We're going to start George Kittle and Juwan Jennings, and then we're going to tricky decision slick Ricky Pearsall. And let's start with the Panthers first. We'll save our Niners for last. Listen, man, Bryce Young threw for 400 yards last week. A lot of what you've heard on this show, like we've put Tedero McMillan on the sell section multiple times this year for like our buys and sells and trades like shows, right? And a lot of that has been like we've told you over and over again. Tedero McMillan, fantastic football player. I think that he has all of the tools to be elite, and he's looking like he will be an elite player. But it's just that the Bryce Young experience has been so bad that it's like not worth as much, right? The 49ers defense they're playing though is severely injured and banged up. Their entire defensive line is basically on the injured reserve, and they just allowed a NFL record-setting 47 completions to Jacoby Brissett last week in a game where the Niners got up early and the other team had to throw to catch up. And the Niners, as it turns out, are allowing a lot of yards, right? And Bryce Young's coming off a 400-yard performance against the Atlanta Falcons last week in a game where they were down big and they had to throw to catch up. I love the Niners offense this week against a fake good Carolina Panthers defense. I think the Niners are going to score and the Panthers are going to be behind the eight ball trying to catch a lead here. Feels like Tet and Bryce Young are pretty solid plays, right? Tet, just because since he is the alpha and omega of the Carolina Panthers passing attack, like that. If Bryce Young throws for 300, I think there's a good chance Tet goes over like 140. Like that's just the situation he's in. I have Tet McMillan rosters that have not been doing well this year, but they're scratching and clawing trying to make the playoffs. I'm starting Tet with full confidence this week. And then Bryce Young on that same token. I feel like you can make an argument for quarterback one this week. I prefer him as like a high end quarterback too, just because it's Bryce Young. But I don't know. It feels like the game situation might be good here for Bryce in the passing attack. Then Rico Dowdle, he's just getting all of the important work, and he's catching dump offs too. The Carolina Panthers have been dumping the ball off at like a crazy rate to the running back, which if you had Chuba Hubbard as your starting running back, you'd be really happy about as a fantasy manager. But it's going to Rico Dowdle instead. He's the clear starting running back, and Chuba just kind of mixes in sometimes like charity carries. So Rico's a start here this week against a Niners defense that just is so banged up they can't stop anyone. And then Chuba, it's more so maybe Rico gets tired. Maybe Chuba gets anywhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 touches this game, but the Niners have been so bad that stopping the run or anyone really that Chuba, if he's live to fall in the end zone, I guess if you need a desperation play, you could start Chuba. I did everything in my power not to start Chuba in the one roster I have him on. He is not starting for me. I'm holding him as like a lottery ticket just in case Rico goes down. Then for the Niners, we had Brock Purdy last week. So 1 week into the experience, it looks like Brock Purdy is pretty healthy. To me, he doesn't look severely hobbled like he did against the Jaguars. Maybe he's not running around as much as he was before, but 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions last week. He's got all his weapons back. I think that Brock Purdy is a sneaky quarterback one the rest of season. If you, if you I don't know, cashed in on a manager in your league, like dropping him because they were frustrated with him or something, and you were able to scoop him up. I think that this is looking good for the Niners, especially that they're kind of shaping up to be like a Bengals type of team for the rest of the season, where we like their offensive pieces, but the defense is just so bad that everything's going to be a shootout. Brock Purdy, quarterback one, full confidence this week. Christian McCaffrey, that there's not much to say here, right? He's like, I think he's in the top 10 in receiving yards in the NFL, plus all of the like traditional rushing work he gets. It's anywhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 28 opportunities a game. It's elite, and the Panthers suck. George Kittle, he got the 2 touchdowns last week. He's clearly like a major factor in the 49ers offense, and he's like a super super nice like red zone target too. He gets such a high percentage of red zone looks from the 49ers quarterback, whether or not it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy. But it feels like Brock Purdy's like chemistry with George is definitely really good too. It feels like Kittle's his favorite person to throw the ball to. He's like a top 3 tight end for me this week. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, that's really the last part of this equation. Ricky Pearsall was on a snap count last week. I think he ran 10 routes. He only had the one catch. Juwan Jennings had a 30% first target read share last week, I guess. So right now, like the way we're operating, the information we're operating with is that Juwan Jennings is acting as the X receiver right now, and Ricky Pearsall is still kind of working his way back. I thought Ricky looked good. I thought Ricky looked healthy. I think the Niners have just been cautious with the player. But this week in this matchup, until we see anything different, I would prefer Jawan Jennings to Ricky Pearsall. I have one roster where I traded for Ricky Pearsall. It was Omarion Hampton for Ricky straight up. I am starting Ricky Pearsall to try and justify that trade.
Nice.
But maybe it's a week too early. I like him rest of season. I think he's going to make a difference, but I would prefer to see it at least 1 week first before we're full confidence. What do you think, man? Do you have some glazing of Tet McMillan you'd like to do?
I mean, maybe a little bit. No, so Ricky was wide open on the play that Brock took a sack and they ended up kicking a field goal from like the 25 or 30. Ricky cut this beautiful cross route where he shook the safety, which was really like, it was, like one of his signature things. He's just been losing dudes over the middle, and that's how he gets those huge chunk plays. He should have had like a 20 or 30-yard touchdown last week. And then, everyone's talking about him a little bit differently. And him and Jawan can totally coexist in the offense. I just think for this week, I do prefer Jawan Jennings. And then I actually checked while you were talking because I was curious. DraftKings Sportsbook has the Tetero McMillan over under at 61.5. You will without a doubt see in my 49ers 5 prop bets, which by the way, I'm approaching 70% hit rate on for the year. I've also had a 5-0 week within the last 2 weeks. You will 100% see me take the over on 61.5 yards with Tetero McMillan this week. The 49ers allow the second most receiving yards to slot wide receivers in the NFL. Upton Stout is the second to last lowest graded corner in the NFL in the nickel or in the slot. And then Tetero McMillan took half his snaps from the slot last week, after which point Coach Dave Canales came out and said, yeah, we realize that you can't really game plan for Tetero. If we keep moving him in the slot, he can finally do both. We are doing both with him moving forward. So, yeah, to me, it's wheels up for Tet this week and next week. He gets the LA Rams next week. Much harder matchup, but they should still have to pass a ton. Yeah, I had one other note, but I don't recall. Yeah, man, I think you got it. I think you did a great job.
All right, that's going to do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. Question of the day for the audience. I called this one before we even started recording because I feel like this is an interesting one. So in one of the free Tendies leagues today, there was a little bit of trade drama. There's a little bit of last second trade drama where one team, I think the offer was like they sent Xavier Worthy, Trey Tucker, and Tyrone Tracy, and they were getting back like Chase Brown, who
Stephon Diggs.
Chase Brown, Diggs, and who was the other one?
Um, I'll tell you
Oh,
right now.
Vidal. It was Vidal. It was
Yeah.
Cavani Vidal, right? So the entire league freaks out about this situation. It's, I would say, very clearly a lopsided trade, but if you like are super in your cope, you could make arguments about why that's justified, and that the guy who was losing the trade did that, right? He's like, well, actually, Kamani Vidal's going to 0, so it's a 2 for 3, basically, right? And Trey Tucker is the wide receiver one, and like I was just wondering how you guys manage your vetoes in your league. I know that popular content creator and fantasy sentiment is you need to never veto unless it's obvious collusion. But in this case, right, we had like one team that like is totally out of the playoffs. It seems very obvious they're tanking, but you can weirdly construct these arguments that, oh, well, I think this, right? So to me, I just vetoed the trade because there was a team that like is out of the playoffs and they're clearly losing a trade. So I was just more willing to say, okay, I'm not. I'm just gonna veto it. I don't care, right? So I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Can't anyone justify any shitty trade they make and then they say you're not being fair by vetoing it? I don't know. It feels like we've just regressed to 0, and I'm now of the opinion that I'm just going to start vetoing trades that I think are unfair. I know that you're not supposed to do that. I know that people get mad about that, but I don't know. It feels like at a certain point, like, what can you believe anymore? I don't know. I know you feel a certain way, Ani. I think you invited our friend to be on the next Ocean Gate submissible
Submersible.
expedition. Yeah.
Yeah, I said I hope he gets one of the 5 invites to the next Ocean Gate submersible test. I love that, by the way, because one, if you get angry at that, like that insult, that's a weird thing to flip out. I would never go on Ocean Gate. You saw what happened. You know what I mean? Like, how do you respond to that? But two, you're telling someone, I hope you get shredded into unfindable atomic particles, which is like a fun thing to wish upon someone. Um, yeah. Yeah, I mean, dude, first of all, just a general, I mean, I don't know. Do we want to pontificate for a minute? Are we too deep in our recording bag here? It's a
We're fine.
conversation
Do it.
to you. 'Cause we can also just do a separate thing on, like one, if you're going to shit talk in fantasy chats, which I'm all for, I actually love it. We're getting down to the playoffs. The stakes are high. There's, $7,000 or $8,000 up for grabs in the free tennis fantasy leagues. Like, if you're gonna shit talk, please try to be funny. Just be funny with it. It's fine. I forget what Ted called the guy in one of our chats. I think he said you're like a customer service guy that's trying to trash me or something. Just funny shit like that. We have another guy named Wesley who I suspect is an alcoholic who keeps telling people that make bad trades, I wish the league could put you to death. Like he wants to publicly get together and execute someone for a bad fantasy trade, which is a silly thing to wish on someone. So like if you're gonna say it, at least be funny. But yeah, dude, I don't know. It's a really interesting question. I don't veto trades for league balance, dude. It has to be crazy. Like it needs to be where I feel like fundamentally the balance of power in the league was upset in such a way that it's no longer a serious or competitive league if I didn't veto the trade. I've only done it 3 times. 22 free Tendies fantasy leagues over the last 2 years since we've really tried to get this thing going. 264 managers, I have only vetoed 3 trades. And they were all trades that, based on market value, were off by hundreds and hundreds of a percent toward one side or the other. I just don't like, because I feel that impulse, right? Which apparently you've fully given into. There's this stress that happens if you're one of the top teams in the league and you see someone got a really good trade done and you realize like, oh man, that's going to really impact our matchup. And you would sort of just rather things stayed the same because you like the balance of power in the league. To me, I've never felt like that's a valid reason to veto. It needs to be something crazy where I'm like, that is not. So like CD for ETN was a trade that went down this year between the number 2 team and the last place team with 1 win in week 11. Yeah, I went ahead and vetoed that. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, that's you can just sort of tell me what your thoughts are on that. I just feel like out of respect for everyone's money and investment, I will veto things that I think like should not take place in a competitive league, but that needs to be extreme. I'm talking 200 to 300% difference in market value toward one side or the other, then I will. But
And
most
market value is derived from just the other trades that are
it's
happening,
it's
right?
the it's
Like, so,
it's an imperfect tool. Even just saying
yeah.
market value is a very rudimentary thing to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was also the great Raheem Mostert trade of 2023 that destroyed a fantasy league. There
So
was that one too that we also did, but it was like such an egregious it was
what
such an
was it?
egregious overpay. It was Raheem Mostert and Kirk Cousins for Jamar Chase and like Garrett Wilson, I think was what it was. And we were just like, no, we're not doing that. And then people got mad because like, well, you need to like honor trades or whatever, and you're not supposed to veto. And we're like, well, the balance of power in the league is too aggressively like swinging here. And I don't know. It just feels like at a certain point, how do you tell for sure, right? Maybe someone is actually like that mentally challenged that they think that these trades are like smart trades, right? I suspect that certain teams are out of the running and just don't give a shit anymore, right? And then they're just kind of poo-pooing on the entire league where,
Well,
people are playing for real cash prizes, right? But who's
well,
to say?
but that's the thing. Like people need to understand. It's not like these two guys got together. They said, "I'm going to give you $100 right now, and then we'll split the pot if I win. If you do this trade." That's very, very rare. I think. You know what's not rare is a dude in the bottom 3 who's annoyed. This guy specifically said he was really offended by people sending him low ball offers for his guys as he's having a bad year. He did the thing. Your year's going great when you break out in the chat. I'm top 1 in my other league, and I'm going to win championships there. I've seen that a few times this year where like some dude's getting crushed in one league and crashes out saying how great he is in his other one. But so, he did that whole thing. And then he's DMing people that I made this trade because fuck this league and fuck everyone here. Well, okay. To me, that's not a trade can be illegitimate on those grounds that it was a trade not meant with the idea that it makes your team better or you can win, but meant to screw over the balance of power in the league. Not because they're colluding, because he's an asshole. Fuck you, Greg. Because he's, you know what I mean? He's just one of those guys. That's what it is. So I think that goes down a lot. I don't know. It's really interesting. Dude, we have a whole off season to try to fill with content. I'm sure we can do videos just talking through some of this stuff. It's a very interesting conversation. It's what game theory is. how human beings behave when you introduce stakes between a bunch of human beings and there's stakes involved. In this case, win money, in this case, reputation. Um, me and Ted, a lot of these guys that play together, they won't hear from either of us until August next year, right? Me and Ted, when we play against each other in fantasy leagues, we will shit talk each other about decisions, about how we did on the year, about how we view fantasy for 6 months after that. Like, there are stakes that go way beyond money or our win-loss record on Yahoo when me and him are playing in a league together. So, like, obviously, it's different too. Like, when something goes wrong when me and him are in a league together, I'm like, oh fuck, oh god, I just know what's coming. Like that. It's just so yeah. Yeah, things get intense.
Yes, sir. Fuck you, Greg. And we'll see you guys
Fuck
for the
you.
gambling show.